My computer's going slow. I'll just start. All right. Welcome, everyone, to today's meeting. May 5th, our first meeting of May, to the Harleysville Rotary Club weekly meeting. Thank you there, John. And we normally start our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And as Rotarians, we try to do our best to live our lives based on a few basic principles. These are the things that we should think, say, and do in our everyday lives. And that is it the truth?
Is it fair to all concerned?
Will it
Build goodwill and
friendships?
And
will it be beneficial to all concerned?
All right. And today's message will be coming from John Mertz.
Good morning.
Morning, John.
Hi, John. As we gather here today as members of Rotary, we pray that we are ever mindful of the opportunities to render our service to fellow citizens and to our community, keeping in mind always the enduring values of life, exerting our efforts in those areas and on those things upon which future generations can build with confidence. Let us continue to strive to make a better world. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Thanks a lot, John. And I'm going to go. Okay. Can you stop the share just for a minute for me? Thank you. All right. Thank you. And this past week we had awesome activities going on with our district conference, and we actually have our upcoming district governor on. So DGE Bob, sorry to put you on the spot, but could you please let us know a little bit about this year's district conference, and then I can play your video after you're finished.
The 2021 district conference that we just had?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd be glad to talk about it. It was 3 days virtual, together with a wonderful day of service on Saturday. So we began with a speaker on, hello? I don't have those bells. Anyway, we began with a speaker on Friday night who told us about being resilient and adjusting our reactions to responses. It was kind of a psychological, sociological conversation. It was good. We had a speaker on Saturday who is a Rotary International Director-elect from New York, young man, and works at M&T Bank. And then on and the final day, we had a speaker who was, and now I'm drawing a blank, but it was really a great speaker, was Alan Mallory, who with his family climbed Mount Everest. But we had breakout sessions and we had fun. There was a magician on Friday night. There was a magician and there was bingo. And Saturday, I know you folks had a project. I don't remember what it is. I was with Area 3 and we cleaned up a public park overlooking the city of Reading where there's the pagoda. Memoriam program on Sunday morning, as we always have, and we had a business meeting on Sunday morning. So it was really, we accomplished a lot of things we do when we're in person, but we did it differently. I like the bingo. That was fun.
Sure. I had a good time with not Rotary Trivia, with the trivia. I think I came in 5th place. There were about 120 people on. So I did pretty good with the music trivia.
Good.
From what I remember, there were around 400 people that had signed up. And at any given time, there were more than 100 people on our multi-district conference. So for all those who attended, I'm sure that you had a great time as well. And at the end of the conference, DGE Bob had shared with us the vision for next year's conference, which I'll play the video now. Hopefully you guys will be able to see it. Where are we at? There. And give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen.
Hello, District 7430 Rotarians. Mark your calendar for April 22nd to the 24th for the 2022 Rotary District Conference at the wonderful Hershey Lodge in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Join 2021-22 District Governor Bob Hobaugh for the sweetest district conference on earth. We can't wait to see all of you in person for this family-friendly, inspiring, major networking event. This conference is a multi-district event with Rotarians from District 7450 of the Philadelphia region and District 7475 in New Jersey. Our district theme of Chart Your Course will follow through the entire conference and lead to this great celebration we're calling Party in the Harbor. And you'll hear from inspirational speakers who will suggest how you can be your best self as a Rotarian and about enhancing your positive personal and professional life. We want you to leave this conference encouraged, invigorated, and prepared to live your best day every day. We also want you to expand your opportunity to bring friends and family. Maybe you have a friend or colleague you've wanted to introduce to Rotary. Invite them to join you for the weekend and make this a friendship experience. If you have children or grandchildren, this is the conference to plan for. Hershey has an amazing array of fun activities, from the incredible Hershey Park, beautiful Hershey Gardens and Butterfly Atrium, Chocolate World, Zoo America, and so much more. You can even bring mom or dad, grandma or grandpa, and make a true family weekend. We'll have special programming for the family throughout the conference. Join us and make memories. Without a doubt, if you're a foodie, you don't want to miss this event. The food at Hershey is amazing. And while they don't put chocolate in everything, when they do, well, it holds up to the name. The House of Friendship will be a room full of Rotary stories that we can all share and explore together, not just from our district, but projects from Philadelphia and New Jersey too. And the evening entertainment of the Uptown Band will keep us dancing all night long. So save the date to party in the harbor and celebrate the fun and friendship that is Rotary. Registration details coming soon. We'll see you in Hershey.
All right, so that was, oops, let me stop my share on my end. All right, well, that was for next year. Are there any pre-registration? That was a great video.
Okay.
Is there any pre-registration? Anything going on? When's registration open?
The person who's doing our registration is Brian Casey, and he just finished up the district conference that we talked about this year, and he's doing their district training assembly this weekend. So we're not going to be able to get our registration up for another week or so.
Okay.
But it will be done by Brian Casey, and he does a great job. Wish I could tell you more.
Excellent. Yeah, if all goes well, we'll be in person at Hershey.
Well,
yes.
we better be in person.
Yes, yes. Thanks a lot, DGE Bob.
Yeah.
And it's great having you on.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
Definitely. So we're going to move on to our presenter for today. Today we have Carla Clanagan, the program director of the Well. And her presentation is going to be on working to end modern day slavery. Carla will speak to us about the reality of the problem and what we should do in doing and what they are doing to address it. Carla creates and maintains programming for residents at the Well, along with managing the house facility and staff so that participants can obtain tools and resources for healing in a safe, supportive environment. Carla, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. It's good to be here this morning. I always enjoy sharing about a topic that isn't necessarily talked about a lot. I know that we've heard about it more often in the news, but I am blessed to be able to be on the front line to assist these women and some men who have been hit and traumatized by human trafficking. And so I just have to put out just a couple quick disclaimers. One is some of the information that I may share can be triggering or difficult to hear. And I would just ask that you take care of yourself. And if you need to turn your volume off or step away from your camera, that is fine. I would suggest that. I also don't mind the interruptions. I think as I present some information to you, it's really good if you ask the question in the moment as opposed to waiting. Typically, if you ask a question or have a question, that usually means someone else has the same question or wanted to ask the same thing, but did not feel comfortable to do so. Also, I am at 7 a.m., so I'm actually still at home, and I have a dog, and he tends to like Zoom meetings. And so I just want to put that out there. I apologize ahead of time if my dog starts barking or trying to interrupt me while I'm presenting. Also, because I run a safe house, I am on call 24 hours a day. I never know when there's going to be an emergency. So I apologize in advance if for some reason my phone starts going off, and it's something that I can't ignore. So with all of that being said, I'm glad to be here. I am a full-time employee with Worthwhile Wear, and I run our safe house. And it's a safe house because we are located without an address in the middle of the woods. And you kind of can't find us unless we tell you how to get to us. On top of that, I am the executive director for MCAT, which is Montgomery County's Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. And we meet monthly starting up in June in Upper Marion. And so if anyone is interested in getting involved in human trafficking work and kind of advocating for the survivors or educating the community about human trafficking, please look up MCAT on all the social media platforms. And it is MCAT, as well as Worthwhile Wear. We always accept volunteers at our house. We have a thrift store, and I co-direct a community program that's called the Worth It program. And we are a national program that works with survivors that aren't in our house. So we work with survivors in the community. So with that being said, human trafficking is considered a form of modern day slavery. And actually, it's interesting because the news talks more and more about human trafficking. But those of us who work in the field understand and realize that everything that the news media labels as sex trafficking is not necessarily sex trafficking. There is a very strict definition of sex trafficking. And I'm not sure how much information you guys have or know, but I will tell you that human trafficking, which includes labor trafficking, sex trafficking, and organ trafficking. We don't talk a lot about organ trafficking, but it definitely is happening. And it does happen locally, as well as sex trafficking and labor trafficking. Human trafficking is actually the second largest criminal industry. It is also the fastest growing. So it's only second to drug trafficking, but it's growing faster than drug trafficking. In 2019, it was said to generate $150 billion per year globally in sex trafficking, which is the buying and selling of a human person. So with that being said, I have a question for you guys. If it's the fastest growing and if it's only second to drug trafficking, why is that? Why do you think sex trafficking or human trafficking, which includes labor trafficking, would be the second growing? grossing $150 billion to the trafficker every year globally. Like when you think about that massive number, it's actually very scary, because it's not like we walk around our neighborhoods and our communities and our workplaces and just can spot out trafficking. Typically, there is a stereotype placed on drug dealers, and they're a little bit more noticeable sometimes. But sex trafficking, labor trafficking, not so much. And the reason for that is that you can take a person and buy them over and over and over again. So it's not like they run out, or you have to re-up, or you have to wait until the supply, makes its way to you again. You don't have to do that. You can grab a vulnerable girl or boy or young woman or man and manipulate them, drug them, and sell them. And you can take one person. The survivors that I work with literally have had been sold on a daily basis, 7 days a week, 10 to 15 times a day at minimum. And when you think about that, that someone can literally take a human, place them in a room, in a hotel, in a motel, in a basement, in a room of a house, and sell them, meaning buyers actually come to the place, pay a fee to have sex with that person. It's horrific. Prostitution is one form of human trafficking, but there is so much more than just you're a street walker, you're a prostitute that's on the street. A lot of sex trafficking happens behind closed doors. It doesn't happen out in the open. It doesn't just happen in cars. So again, I said there's 3 types of human trafficking, which is sex, labor, and organ trafficking. I do want to make sure that you guys understand the definition of sex trafficking. Sex trafficking is the recruitment, the harboring, transportation, provision, or obtaining of a person for the purposes of a commercial sex act, in which this commercial sex act is induced by force, fraud, or coercion, or if the person is under the age of 18. So there was a law passed in 2000 and I want to say 14 and then 18. The law was passed saying that if you're under age 18, you cannot, sorry about that, you cannot consent to having sex or being a streetwalker or having sex with commercial sex act. So if you're under 18, there needed to be a law passed saying that you cannot go to court and be found as having to legally consent to this sex act. Because what was happening, girls under the age of 18 or 18 and under were being arrested and charged with commercial sex act, prostitution, and the trafficker or the John or the pimp or the guy or the woman was being set free because they were saying that this 17, 16, 14, 12-year-old consented to the sex act. So a lot of people who advocate for anti-trafficking laws advocated a lot to get this law passed, saying that if you're under 18, it's automatic. It's automatic that you could not consent to the sex act, and the person who got arrested or charged with you is at fault. To me, that's a scary thing to think that we needed a law to say that a 14-year-old can't consent to having sex with multiple partners, or a 12-year-old. And I'm using those ages because the age of entry into sex trafficking is, the average age is 12 to 14. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Does anyone have any questions about that definition? Just know, in order for it to be proven in the court of law for sex trafficking, it has to be force, fraud, or coercion. Those things have to be proved.
Carla,
Yes,
is that just in Pennsylvania or is that nationwide?
it's nationwide.
Oh, good.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yes. Now, again, we have to remember there are certain state laws that, so like that's a Pennsylvania law, but nationwide, everyone has that similar law for children under the age of 18. The federal law states that definition that I gave you of sex trafficking. So that force, fraud, or coercion that's needed is a federal law, that definition. And that was a federal law, I think, since 2000, the year 2000. It became a Trafficking Victims Protection Act of 2000. So when we talk about force, fraud, or coercion, sex trafficking, and that's specifically what I'm going to talk about. Although I've worked with women who have been labor trafficked, I'm going to specifically talk about sex trafficking, but I will mention some labor trafficking things. There has to be an act in order for it to be proven to be sex trafficking. And the act is you have to recruit someone, transport someone, and just know you don't have to transport someone from country to country or state to state. It could be just by removing them from where they're at and taking them to another location, even if that's from, this house to across the street or down the street. It's just moving someone. Recruiting is really big. And I think that's where we all come in at. These young women are being recruited right under our noses and we're not recognizing it. And we're not making our, and I speak specifically of women because the percentages of women that are involved in sex trafficking are a lot higher. But please know that young boys and men are also involved in sex trafficking, and that the pimp or the trafficker does not always have to be a man. There are a lot of women in this field, and there are a lot of women who own strip clubs, and they are a part of this trafficking game. But there has to be an act of recruiting or transporting, an act of harboring or obtaining a person. And then there's a means. That's that force, fraud, or coercion. So you recruit someone by force, by fraud, or coercion for the purpose of commercial sex. And the Commercial Sex Act, commercial sex is not just prostitution. It could be stripping, it could be escorting. There's many ways that these men or that these ladies are involved in sex trafficking. When we talk about force, most of it is physical restraint, physical harm. Sometimes it's the very act of being raped in order to get someone to be submissive because of the shame that comes along with rape. So it's not uncommon for a guy to pose as a date, get the woman in a very compromising position, raping them or offering them drugs, taking pictures of them, and then using that to threaten them to either stay with them or to do what they want them to do. And I wish that all of this was like a foreign concept to me as well as to you. But unfortunately, I work with survivors every single day, and this is their true story. The fraud part is the false promises. And this is where social media plays a huge part in this part. False promises, social media has a lot of power over the younger generation, especially. It has power over all of us. I don't even think we realize that our mental health is affected by social media because we just believe the things that we see and hear, good or bad. Everyone's life looks perfect. Everyone's doing so well. No one has any problems. Everyone is in their top fitness shape. Everyone's kids are doing wonderful. Social media is such a farce, right? It's makes it very easy for these traffickers, for these pimps to be able to coerce and to fraud these young women with promises promises of, jewelry, promises of a fast life, promises of, these guys drive a fancy car. They can approach anyone because they can go into someone's messaging and just give them great compliments. The younger generation, a lot of the women that come to our house for safety, if they're under the age of 26, I guarantee you that they were lured into the game because of false promises. They were looking for, the cute guy who made promises of a better life, made promises of fancy clothes, designer bags, fun, right? And before you know it, that turned into some horrific nightmare that they couldn't escape, because a lot of traffickers then will introduce a woman to drugs. Most of them will, if you're not already using a drug, they definitely, that's the plan, to get you addicted to the drug. And so they give you some really serious, very addictive drugs. Not to say they're not all addictive, but heroin is a big one. PCP is a big one. They're not just going to have you smoke weed. They're going to introduce you to an opiate that we know is way more addicting than marijuana. Does anyone have any questions about that means? Like, how does a person get trafficked, and that definition, and how force, fraud, or coercion, like in court, we have to prove that there was some sort of false promise, that there was some sort of fraud. And that can also mean threatening your family, threatening your kids, threatening your parents. It can mean all of those things. It could mean telling your boss or your coworkers, that you've done some illicit act that you would be ashamed of. It could mean sharing pictures of something that you did. I'm just going to breeze through some of this information that I have.
Carla?
Yes.
Sorry,
yes.
I was trying to.
No, you're fine.
I was muted. I was trying to ask you a question if I could. This is Marsha. Is there a certain sort of like socio or economic sort of like consistent trend in the people you see sort of getting lured in by all these promises? When you mentioned like the handbag, or, I'll give you all this jewelry and things like that. So I was wondering, if there's a certain socioeconomic stance of these people.
I would say that if we checked our Polaris, which is where we can get a lot of our data from, it would appear that most of the women who are victims of sex trafficking are from inner city, urban communities, the minorities, the disenfranchised areas, or women who have the vulnerabilities of having a history of child abuse, foster care, those who are on the lower level of or considered living in areas of poverty. Those are bigger numbers. I don't always talk about that because we have to understand that this is everywhere. And when we start talking about, is there a certain class, is there a certain area, we tend to overlook what's happening right in our suburban communities. And so I don't always focus on that, but just know those are the higher numbers, mainly because those are the more populated areas. It's not necessarily because of the area itself. What we have found is that there's a lot of trafficking happening in our suburban communities. I not just sit on Montgomery County's anti-human trafficking coalition, but because my job works with Bucks County and Montgomery County, I also go to the BCAT meetings. And I have talked to counselors in both of those areas that have issues or that are trying to help children in their school districts, our suburban school districts, that the parents are trafficking them, that they're being trafficked right out of their homes. And so these children live in so I'm from Collegeville, Limerick area, but these children are living in our suburban homes. They're going to school and the counselors are recognizing, the teachers are recognizing that something is happening, or they know that it's actually sex trafficking, and what do we do about it? And how do we go about that? And so I tried to really focus on, I feel like I'm like, after 911, right? You go to the airport, they're like, if you see a bag, report a bag. See anything suspicious, report anything suspicious. So most of the people that I speak to are from suburban communities. And so I try to focus on what is it that we would see, right? What is it walking through my development that I could take note of or pay attention to? What is it when I drop my children off at school that I could see that would be a little bit suspicious? If I'm a teacher, what does that look like? If I'm in the restaurant, especially like a more, not necessarily a Fridays or a Dave and Buster's, but more like if I'm at William Penn Inn or if I'm at the Capitol Grill, like what am I looking for? Because a lot of traffickers wine and dine in a very, very expensive way in order to be fraudulent toward these women. And so just really quick, before we talk about these red flags and risk factors and what we can do, I just want you to know that there's many types of sex trafficking. There's not just prostitution. I know before I learned about sex trafficking, I really assumed that prostitutes are prostituting or being prostituted because it was not always their choice, but modern day, probably their choice. It's the same thing with strippers in strip club. And I'm using these labels, but just so you know, we don't use these labels at work. We don't say that you were a prostitute. We say you were prostituted because someone forced them to do those things. Just like in a strip club, we don't realize how much prostitution and how much sex trafficking happens in a strip club. The world would have us to believe that strip clubs are fairly innocent, and that they're manageable, and that they're being watched over by the strip club owner. But what we don't know is typically it's the pimp or the trafficker that sends the woman into the strip club to bank money. And it's really hard for them to make money because the money that they pick up after being thrown at them, they then have to pay the strip club owner for allowing them to work there. Imagine going to work, and when you get your paycheck, you have to pay your job for allowing you to work there. They don't pay you for the work that you did. You pay them for allowing you to be there. So these ladies have to pay the strip club owner. They have to pay the DJ for playing a song for them. They have to pay the bouncer or the security guard for protecting them. And then they have to pay the bartender sometime for serving drinks the whole time they're dancing. So when they leave out of there, it's a lot less money than what they made. And typically they have to do other things in order to bring home the money that they were told to bring home, which is why they end up doing other things behind the building, in the back room. It's because they need the money in order to get home. It's not because they just felt like, ooh, let me do this illicit thing in the back space because this is what I do. It's really, really sad when you hear their personal stories of things that happen to them. But we also need to know that pornography is a form of sex trafficking. There's a lot of underage girls and boys in those pornography movies and films, and we don't recognize it. And so there's a whole movement to stop pornography from being shown in hotels and motels and for being taken off the World Wide Web. Familial pimping is what I spoke about in the suburbs a lot, but it happens a lot in the city as well. And it's generations of pimps. And so we have dealt with our organization. We've dealt with a lot of pimps who are in their young age of 20s, and they're pimping out girls. And so what can we do about it? There are some red flags that we need to pay attention to. And one of these red flags that's a really big one is younger girls with older women and older men who seem to be controlled by them. If you're at the restaurant and you see this young girl with this older guy, and she rarely looks up, she kind of keeps her head down, there's not much conversation happening at the table, it's very quiet, that could be a sign of trafficking. It could also be a sign, we could be in a mall and you could see a young girl with an older gentleman. And I keep saying older gentleman because the age of a trafficker and the age of the person that buys women is middle class, married, Caucasian, middle-aged men. And that's why I keep saying, if you see a young person, or if you see a young girl or a woman like really dressed up, like really short skirt, really high heels, a lot of makeup, got her nails done, got her hair done, and the gentleman that she's with is just like in his shorts and his t-shirt. You know, he's got his khakis on and his shirt, but she's like overly dressed to be at the mall or overly dressed to be, you know, at Dave & Buster's. That could be a sign. That's another red flag. So significantly older partner is a red flag. Look at the internet and look at branding tattoos. Be careful of tattoos. They will brand you. Pimps and traffickers like to brand their women to be able to identify them. Young girls, young boys that seem to be truant from school. They have a lot of absentees from school. There's something happening there. You see someone go out and then they come back late at night, like their hours are really off. Like they go out at night and they come back. You know, they're not in the medical field. You know, they're not working at a warehouse, but they're dressed, you know, the lady, the woman is dressed really provocative. That could be a sign. If you're at the grocery store, if you're somewhere or you know someone and they go through their bag or their purse and a bunch of hotel room keys seem to be pulled out. You know, as women, we're always pulling stuff out of our purse looking for that small item. That's another red flag. Those hotel room keys, finding hotel room keys with your teenagers, with your young adults in your life. Those are all red flag.
Carla,
Yes.
I have to leave soon, but I just wanted to ask a question. I was a healthcare worker for years, and we had to do the in-services on child abuse and reporting it. But say you're at the mall or, you know, at the theater and you see something like this. How do you call the police?
Yep,
Do
you can.
notify
So
the
that's the
manager?
thing.
Whatever?
You call your local police. You can call
Okay.
the local police. You can call 911. You can also call the National Human Trafficking Hotline. You can Google that number. It's 1-888-373-78888. So please call your local authorities, call the national hotline. They will then get information from you. You can make that anonymous call. But emergency rooms, hospital personnel, that is really, really key. All of my ladies have been in and out of the emergency room, and no one in those particular hospitals ever asked them a question. And they always had their pimp with them. Their pimp won't allow them to say many things. Their story is very canned. It's a very canned response, which means they rehearsed it. They say the same thing. If you pay attention to when you ask her a question, she looks at him for an answer.
Yeah.
She doesn't get to speak. He doesn't want her taken out of the room. We have trained many emergency room personnel to know how to say that she has to go down for a test of some sort and that he can't come. And that's the way to get the lady away from him. So I'm open for questions our last few minutes. If anyone has any specific questions, I do work with survivors every day. I've heard every story. I've seen the ladies come from absolutely nothing. The vulnerable young women and kids are those that have been abused and those who are in foster care and the runaways. They say within 48 hours of running away, a trafficker has already approached them.
Wow.
College campuses,
Thank
big.
you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. This is Lani. How do the women get out of the situation besides, like you mentioned, this, situation in an emergency room, are there other ways or means to get out?
Yeah, so, the sad part is that the manipulation and the control, the mind game is so strong that the ladies don't feel like they need to get out or that they can get out. However, we work with a lot of the police departments and the FBI, and it's tips from citizens like us who can make the difference. It at least allows the police or the FBI agents that are victim specialists to have a conversation with these ladies to get them to see that there is help out there and they don't have to stay in it. But there's a lot of day stops throughout the city and community. So like all of the service organizations are trained and are aware, or should be, to look out for their clients that come through, right? So the Department of Welfare, they should pay attention to the clients that are coming through. The different agencies in our communities should be paying attention to the ladies that come through. But it's really up to that lady. We have had pulled many ladies out of the game, and that's what we call it, the game, who run and go right back. I actually had a girl run back to her trafficker after being with us for 6 months. A couple weeks ago, she went back to him. And so we called the local police because we found out where she was and we wanted her arrested, and we got her arrested. And for us, that's a win because we know she's away from him. That would give her time to think without him thinking for her.
Carla, this is Marsha again. Could you give us that national hotline number again? And I'll put it in our newsletter.
It's 1-888-373-7888. And you can also text the word help to Be Free, which is 233-733.
Okay, thank you.
And so, if you see something that looks suspicious, if you have an opportunity to approach someone that seems to be in distress, it's just a matter of letting them know that you're a safe person. Ask them one question, like, can I help you? Can I call someone for you? Sometimes we've had women rescued just like that. A community member seen something that didn't look right. When they had the opportunity, they said, can I help you? Can I call someone for you? And that girl will say, can you call my parents? Can you call my mom? Can you, yes, I need help. And at that point, you just get call the local police. You don't need to intervene. You don't need to do anything but call the police.
Carla, good morning. I have a couple of questions. Through a year, approximately how many people does the well service?
So we're a 6-bed residential home. So in a year, we're serving 6 women. However, we have a community program that serves 12 women each season. And so, we have the potential to service somewhere between 50 and 60 women a year. Just with our organization. There's only about 100, I think it's 192 organizations across the country, which isn't a lot.
Okay.
There are some states that don't have any organizations working with survivors.
Okay. And how do women or people transition out of the well?
So we're actually fortunate to be a long-term program, which means we're a 2-year program. And so our goals for our women that transition out is to have a full-time job with full-time benefits. We help them find apartments and we help them furnish their apartments. And then we continue to case manage them and offer them therapy, for the next 2 years until they're really able to be on their own.
Okay. Wow, that's great.
But once they graduate our program, they become sisters of our program, which means we're always available to them.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mark and then Jack.
Yeah, you had talked about the things that need to be proved in order to prosecute, but or in order to establish that human trafficking has taken place. But how easy is it to prosecute when there is somebody who's doing that? How easy is it to put them behind bars or to take them out of the scene?
The FBI will tell you that it's the hardest thing to prove, because they're very slick, and they're very tricky is the word that we like to use. But it's very hard to prove. And I think the hardest part is that most of our women don't want to press charges. Out of the, like, we have 6 women at the well. None of them have court cases against their trafficker.
Mm-hmm.
So I could say I've been with the well for 4 years. I've worked with survivors for the past 12 years. I can count on my one hand how many actually, testified, how many pimps actually, or traffickers actually went to court and went through that whole court case. So
Right.
it's rare that they get prosecuted.
Jack,
So if
did
you
have a
hear about it, just know that's big. We really celebrate it when they do.
Mm-hmm. Jack?
Yes, our Rotary Club works with a group called Roots of Recovery, and it's one of our club members, Catherine McDowell, and she has a similar program. Their big thing is to obviously get them off the drugs too.
Yes, definitely.
That's the hardest part, because they've gotten them addicted, and many of them have lost their children to foster care and other situations.
Right.
So, and what we did this past year was we built a huge garden area for them to grow their own food. So they're growing their own food, and the excess food goes to the food pantry that we work with.
That's awesome.
But everybody's winning in this thing.
Yes.
And she's also working with them. She's a yoga instructor. That's her background. And she's got them into this thing with yoga to the point where they're getting off these addictions and, trying to get them back in the community and trying to get their children and trying to recover their children.
Yeah.
It's a tough, you're right. They rarely can they find the people that are trafficking them.
Yeah.
And prosecute them. So,
yeah, it's tough. At the well, we do all of those things with them. We offer the safety, which is why we're in the middle of nowhere. But it's hard for them to really, they miss the life. And for us, it's not the drug addiction. If they're coming to us and they're ready, the drug addiction is almost like the easier part. The hard part is the trauma. The trauma affects them, and it's the lens in which they view the world. So we work 6 months or more to get them to just trust us as staff. And then we work in the next, year and a half, just trying to get them to see their value. But when they do, we celebrate it. But yeah, it's the trauma, because most of the women that we work with, over 90% of the women that we work with have childhood trauma and abandonment issues. And that trauma is, add that to all the times they were raped, all the times the things they had to do and the shame that comes along with it. The trauma is the biggest fight for us.
Yes. This has been an amazing conversation. Carla, I want to mention that we have more than 7 different clubs on the call. And if you'd like to reach out to Carla, if it's okay, Carla, could you put your email in the chat?
Yep, I'll do that now.
Yes, and in the virtual world, we're definitely, it does make it a lot easier to go to different clubs. Actually, Jack is in North Carolina, so
wow.
He's a former member of the club, and I'll reach out to one of the people from Bethlehem Morning Star. Sean, you had your hand up. Looks like Carla did put her email in the chat. So Sean, we'll make this the last question. And we're at 7:53. So how about we make this the last question? And Carla, if you have any final words, then we'll kind of conclude our meeting. Go ahead, Sean.
Okay. My question is, I live up in the Northampton County area, Lehigh Valley, and we have it's called VAST, Valley Against Sex
Yes.
Trafficking.
Yep.
My question is, do groups like yours and, VAST, and is there a way that they all kind of talk, or they have a coalition together? So like if the people who are being trafficked, if they're going from one area to another, that, you can be aware of, what's happening, and okay, this is a hot spot,
Yep.
keep not, is that what your organizations do?
So if you're involved in human trafficking in any of the nearby counties, then I probably know you or someone in your organization, because we all get the phone calls of survivors that need help or from another organization. And so if short-term housing gets a call and they don't have any beds, they call us. If we don't have a bed, I'll refer them to a short-term place until we have a bed. We all work together in referring, in sharing names. We are part of a national shelter alliance. So we work with other houses and other organizations across the country. And so we make referrals, and we get referrals from all of the United States. And so I'm very familiar with VAST. We've had women come through VAST before that have lived with us. But yes, because we're such a small community, it almost makes it easy for us to get to know one another, because we definitely need one another. We also work with domestic violence organizations. For us here in Bucks Montgomery County, we work with the Laurel House, and we work with a woman's place, because we have had to put women into those shelters until we had beds, just so they could escape and be safe. So yes, we do work with one another.
Excellent.
It takes a team.
Yes. It looks like we do have a few people that wanted to say something, but we're going to have to end with that. Carla, any last words?
Just thank you guys, and please don't be afraid to make the call. Be alert, make the call, but more importantly, your job now is to share this information that you learned today, especially if it's new information. Share it with your family, share it with your coworkers, share it with your circle of people, and most importantly, share it with the young women and even the young men in your life.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us, Carla.
Thank you.
Another amazing meeting. Club, we had more than 30 people on. That was great. I know there were a few people that had things that they would really wanted to make sure that you guys knew about. There was Sandy Piper. You had something about the Kindness Committee.
Yes, I do. I just wanted to let everybody know I had the Interact students do 300 cards, and I'm going to pick them up today. And then we have a couple people on the committee that are going to be delivering. So we really didn't need any help, but they needed ours. So I felt that it was important to get most of the cards to them. We are going to be doing Father's Day cards. I haven't purchased them yet, because when these were purchased, Gary Volpe actually purchased them, and he thought they were putting half and half Father's Day and half Mother's Day. It was like all Mother's Day cards they sent us. So I will get them ordered, and I will reach out to the club to get help on that one.
That's great. That's great. And Carol, you mentioned something about potatoes.
Yeah, so we have 1,000 pounds of seed potatoes. If anybody can help us cut them up, we're looking to plant them the 15th over in Audubon. So if anybody's available to help us plant them too, but you can just pick up the potatoes at my house in Solderton and take them home and cut them up at your house and bring them back.
Oh, okay. So that's how it works. They aren't really seeds. You just chop
No,
up
they're potatoes that then you cut. So basically the potato plant grows from the eye of the potato. So you cut them up into halves or thirds, and each one of those then creates a plant that produces potatoes.
Learn something new every day.
Yeah,
right.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Oops. Carol, this is Carla. Sorry, my camera.
Hi, Carla.
Hi, can you send me some information? Because our ladies, we like to get them involved in all kinds of different projects.
Yes.
Especially when they're new to the house. They have a lot of time on their hands. And so we try to get them involved in safe community projects. And
yes,
so
absolutely.
if you could just send me some information, and that way we can kind of stay in touch, that'd be great.
Yep.
Thank you.
There you go. There's a connection. All right, Moana.
Yeah, I just want to check with Carol. You said that cut potatoes and bring it back. Are they supposed to just leave it in the normal temperature or what? Means, do you want after on 5:15 if we get it this week?
So I need them to come back to me then. I mean, if you're going to help plant, the potatoes have to stay in a cool place. So like right now we're storing them in our garage. So we picked them up yesterday. They need to get cut up hopefully by Monday. They need about a week before planting to kind of scar over.
Okay.
It just helps them.
Yeah, but you said that you take home and cut it. So when we cut it, are we supposed to do it 2 days, 3 days before? How?
No, like sometime in the next couple of days. We're
Okay.
trying to get all the seed potatoes cut by like Monday if we're going to plant them on Saturday.
Okay, so Monday, if we give it to you by Monday, back to you, right? That's what you're
Yeah,
saying?
that'd be
Okay.
well. Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Okay. And Mona, and then I think I'll put Frank on the spot. Next week is going to be our club assembly. So we're looking for doing something for club assembly. So Frank, if you can mention that after Mona. Mona, did you have a question?
No.
Oh, you're unmuted. I thought that was, I can't see your camera, but you unmuted yourself. I thought you had something you wanted to add. All right. So next week is the 12th of May. We're going to do a club assembly, which it'll be the next to the last one under my presidency. And what we really like to do is to get our committees to talk about their future plans and things that they would like to see happen within the next year. So from what I understand, we're gonna set it up in breakout rooms. So committee chairs, if you haven't reached out yet, please reach out to either myself or the incoming president, Frank Romano, to let us know what you have in mind for next week. All right, Frank.
Yeah,
did I miss anything? Go ahead.
Just first of all, I said for Larry Moss, we had a meeting with the golf committee, and what we need to do, Larry, is get all the names of the signs that you have, the companies and T signs for the golf. So I'll give you a call, and maybe if you're doing anything, if you're going to the adopt a highway, or if not, maybe right after that we can go over to the to your storage there, and we could take down the names of all those and get them back to the committee, and so that we can follow up on them, the ones we already have. So I need to do that. So I'll give you a call and see if we can set something up. As far as next week, now we're not going to be able to do every single committee because it's some people are on both committees and things like that. What we'll probably do is certainly the membership committee, and then the fundraising committees need to get together and get dates and decide what they're going to do. So that's like the four-way test breakfast, the bowling. What else we have? We've been meeting for the Halloween Fun Fest. So those kinds of committees will get together, but especially the membership. So Lisa and Dinah, if you're on, please, get together, notify the people that you know are on the committee, find out if they're still there. The rest of us will be able to choose whatever committees are meeting. The rest of you will be able to choose, say, well, I want to go and hear about what this committee is doing. Ultimately, we want everybody should be involved in some committee, if not, more than one. But it will be a time, and we'll have the breakout sessions, and we'll come back and just have a review so that everybody can know what happened in each of the sessions. I will, set up a couple questions to start with, but the committees will be at different levels of where they're active. Some of them might just be getting their act together. Some of them might be getting dates together. It depends where you are on the committees. So we'll start with them, and then periodically we will do this to make sure all committees have a chance to get together.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you. But definitely the chairs, just think about who you have and what you need to talk about, because you'll probably get like maybe 15 minutes, and then we'll do another 15 minutes maybe, and then we'll hear the results of what we're doing.
Sounds good. Does someone have a question? Right.
I was going to say, Frank, I don't need to do any, the kindness committee doesn't need to do anything, do we?
Not unless, if you feel you seem to be working and meeting it, but if you, you don't have to, but it's up to you whether you want to, get together or not with that time. I just think, I know the membership committee needs to get together, and I know that the fundraisers need to get together to start. Others like the foundation, I know that Reverend Steve is taking the foundation. What he really needs is probably at some point to get one or two other people to just be aware of what's going on, so that we don't have one person doing. We don't want one person committees. Let's put it that way. There's no, that's a dangerous thing for the club when you only have one person. We just talked earlier about Larry Moss training some one or two people to help learn club runners so that they could take over if he needs the help or something. He changes. He's been doing it for a while. Hopefully, he's doing it for another year, and. So that's what we need to do. So if you feel, I will definitely have the membership committee, so they need to get their act together. And any of the fundraisers, the bowling, as I said, I will get that out to Marsha so that she can send it out in the newsletter saying which committees definitely should be ready to go.
All right.
Okay.
And Richie, you had something on, there's something coming up July 4th. Is there?
Yes, Concert Sundays is coming up July 4th. Hope to get a sign-up sheet together in the next couple weeks. But the most important thing right now is I sent out an email about the patrons. If you're interested in giving towards that, please respond to that email. I'd like to get it to Concert Sundays by the end of the week. So I'd like to know by Friday if you'd like to give to the patrons. And we'll have more information for Concert Sundays in the coming week.
Excellent. There you go.
All
right.
One other comment. I know Gary, I don't think Gary's on. I know he's in Florida right now. But in the thing I sent out with the committees and the chairs and so on, people got back to me to the fact that I changed the croquet team to the crochet team. So you don't need needles or anything. That's really the croquet, not the crochet. I asked Gary whether he was interested, and he said no, he much rather continue the croquet. So that's the difference there.
Spell check, right? All right. That's funny. So anyone else for the betterment of the club? All right. And it is at 8:07. We did not do brags and sags. If anyone has a brag or a sag,